Hello, my name is Veronica. Last Friday, on March 28th, I went on a walk through Toronto's Nathan Phillips Square up to Old City Hall with my big history class. Today, I'm going to be going over a couple of the stops I found to be the most interesting, and I found that it was a great experience to see how everything around us, sculptures, gardens, buildings, the stones in the buildings, tell a much bigger story of big history. So big history is all about seeing how everything is connected, from stars exploding billions of years ago to the materials we use to build our cities and monuments today. I'll be showing you pictures, and we'll talk about how these everyday things fit into the biggest story ever told. Okay, so here you can see at the first stop this huge twisty sculpture. It looks kind of like a relic from an alien society, or a bone from a massive creature, maybe even a part of a spaceship. Anyways, the sculpture is called The Archer, and it was made by a famous artist called Henry Moore, who wanted to create a sculpture that could complement the new City Hall and Civic Square. It's made from bronze, a metal that humans create by melting together copper and tin. But where exactly did those metals come from? Well, Earth, but not Earth originally. They were created inside of exploding stars called supernovas billions of years ago. After those stars exploded, their metal dust floated around space, and some of that dust clumped together and formed our planet Earth. Over millions of years, humans dug up these metals and learned to mix them, and finally artists like Henry Moore used them to create sculptures like this. So when you see this sculpture, and other sculptures made of the same material, you're seeing a journey that started in space, traveled through time, and then ended up here in Toronto, our home. It's not just a piece of art, it's a piece of the universe, really. And here you see the Peace Garden, a quiet and beautiful place right in the middle of the city. In the center of the garden is an eternal flame, a fire that is meant to burn forever, reminding people never to forget the importance of peace. Surrounding the flame, you can see water, and normally fire and water are enemies, as, water puts fire out. But here they sit peacefully together. This teaches us that even things that seem as though they cannot get along, like people from different cultures, ideas, and with different ways of life, can find a way to live side by side and even thrive. Now, looking carefully at the small stone structure, you can see that half of the roof is missing. Well, it's not broken, it was built that way on purpose. The broken roof symbolizes what happens when wars and fighting tear apart cities and homes. But looking around, you also see trees and flowers growing strong all around the broken roof. This garden tells us that even after terrible destruction, life grows back, and that peace is not just about stopping fights, it's about healing, rebuilding, starting again, and creating a thriving society, which creates another pattern of events shaping the future in a, hopefully, positive way. And here you can see Toronto City Hall with its two tall towers curving inwards. So this building isn't just shaped like this for fun or by accident. It was designed like this on purpose to symbolize openness and new ideas. Toronto is a place where people from all over the world come together, and the City Hall's shape welcomes them. City Hall is made from concrete, which comes from crushed rock and limestone, glass, which comes from melted sand, and steel, which comes from iron deep inside of the earth. Here you can see how the materials gleam in the sunlight, showing the amazing things that humans can create from simple Earth's materials. But building something this massive takes more than just materials, it takes teamwork. Thousands of workers, architects, designers, builders, all had to work together to make this come about. And teamwork is one of the most important forces in big history, as it's how humans have always survived and built amazing things. When we look at City Hall, we don't just see stone and glass that took millions, if not billions of years to form. We also see a symbol of human cooperation, imagination, and hope for the future. And over here, we can see a very special structure, the Inukshuk. This is a figure made out of carefully balanced rocks, built to look like a person standing proudly in the middle of the land. A long time ago, the indigenous people in Canada, living in the cold, snowy north, built Inuksuks to survive and communicate across vast empty spaces, as there were no trees to hang signs from, no bright lights to guide travelers, no printed maps, just endless snow, ice, and rock. So, the indigenous used what nature provided: strong, heavy stones shaped by millions of years and geological processes. Each Inukshuk had a message. It could say, "This is a safe way," "There is food nearby," or even "You're not alone." In harsh conditions where survival depended on small cues, these stone markers were life-saving guides, potentially. And here you can see how carefully the stones are stacked, balancing just right so that they don't topple over, even through strong winds and other harsh weather conditions. The Inukshuk represents a beautiful part of the big history story: adaptation. Humans, like all living things, have always had to adapt to survive in different environments. But humans adapted not just with their bodies, they adapted with creativity, communication, and community spirit. The Inukshuk is a symbol of how people didn't just survive by themselves, but helped one another, leaving behind markers of kindness and wisdom for strangers that they might never even have met, or come to meet in the future. The rocks themselves also carry a deeper connection to big history, as they are ancient pieces of the Earth's crust, formed through the same long process of mountain building, erosion, and glaciation that shaped the continents. When indigenous builders placed these stones one by one, they were stacking pieces of deep time into a monument for human cooperation. So, the Inukshuk is more than just a guidepost. It's a connection between nature and culture, between Earth's long history and human survival. Between one generation to the next, it reminds us that across thousands of years, through ice ages and various migrations, humans have always depended on each other, leaving a small message of hope to build from the very bones of the planet itself. Alright, and over here we can see Old City Hall with its grand stone walls and tall clock tower. This building was finished in 1899, but the stones that we see are much older. They were formed by nature millions of years ago, long before humans even existed. Many of the stones used in Old City Hall come from local quarries around Ontario, especially places rich in ancient limestone. So, limestone is a special kind of rock because it forms from the shells and skeletons of tiny sea creatures that lived in the warm, shallow oceans hundreds of millions of years ago. When those creatures died, their shells piled up on the ocean floor and slowly turned into rock over millions of years. This means that the very stones that we see here were once part of the ancient sea floors and full of life. If you look very closely at the stones, and here you can see their different colors, textures, and layers, you might even find tiny fossils hidden inside. I wasn't really able to capture any on my phone, but every ripple, crack, and, fossil in these stones is a memory of a world that existed long before humans and even the dinosaurs. When the builders of Old City Hall used these stones, they thought they were just making a building, but they weren't really. They were connecting a deep ancient story to the new story of the growing city of Toronto. So Old City Hall isn't just a beautiful old building to admire. It's a bridge between ancient Earth and the world we live in today, carrying the memories of the ocean, creatures, and time itself in every stone here. Okay, and that is the end of the Big History Walk. So on this walk, I discovered that a sculpture can be made of stardust, a garden can tell the story of war and hope, a building can show the power of teamwork, a stone figure can guide travelers across snow and time, and ancient rocks can hold the memories of the earth. Everything around us is part of a much bigger and more amazing story. A story that started with the birth of the universe and continues today with all of us. Reflecting on this experience, I realized that learning about big history through a walk like this made everything feel much more alive and connected. I found that it's really important to slow down and explain things in a way that makes them exciting and easy to imagine, like how stars explode to create metals, or how people use stones to survive. I also learned that making connections between simple things, like buildings or gardens, and huge ideas like the universe, really helps to bring big history to life. For the child in me, or anyone new to big history, I think the walk made it easier to understand that everything has a story behind it, even things that seem ordinary. The sculptures, buildings, and stones that we see around us aren't just there, they're connected to deep time and human creativity. I also found that using simple language and examples worked really well because it made complex ideas feel like fun discoveries instead of big boring lessons, and if I were to do this walk again, I would take even more time to stop and ask more questions. But that is all for now. Thank you so much for coming on this virtual walk with me. I hope you'll all look at the world a little bit differently and see the invisible strings that connect everything across the universe.